Okay, guys, so I'm back once again, and this time we're here for another interview. Now, I've talked about this before on the main podcast, and I've kind of mentioned it to you guys anyway on pretty much your one stop shop resource for any cosplay convention that you might be interested in. So without me doing it a disservice, which I'll normally botch it in things because that's what I do in these things. I'm actually going to let the man himself introduce himself and what his website is.
Hey everyone, and thanks Armin for having me on. My name is Benjamin Santos, and I am the founder of cosplayconventioncenter.com. It's a free-to-use, searchable database of conventions. You can basically search by region, by state, by theme, and discover cons all over the country. We even have some Canadian conventions in it, as well as a few in the UK, which we are hoping to branch more into as the year progresses. The other really cool part is that you can actually discover merchants, professional cosplayers, podcasts. So it's an all-inclusive site where you can really discover everything you ever wanted to find for conventions.
Now, here's the thing, and I've told the story, but I know some people might not have heard that on the podcast or anything. Pretty much how I came to kind of know you and to start talking to you. I'm sitting at my booth at Vermont Comic Con, and for a while now, I've always wanted this thing where, hey, I need something that could tell me what cons are in this area. And when you go to like search it online, you're gonna get like nothing, and you're gonna get broken links. You're gonna find nothing, absolute crap. And you literally just walk over, like, hey, here's my business card. So here's what the website does. And I'm sitting there, I'm listening to you. I'm like, either this guy is full of crap, and he's selling me on exactly what I like. He's trolling me because this is what I've always needed, or he's telling the God honest truth. So that weekend, after Vermont Comic Con, I came home, I check out the website, and it's literally what you said. You're like, okay, so pick New England. Here's everything. Here's every con, when it's coming up. You click that con, it tells you what cosplay group is there. You click the cosplay group, it tells you whatever other con they're going to. It's literally that easy, and that's how I actually found out Granite State Comic Con was happening 3 weeks after Vermont Comic Con. I was like, hey, guys, we're going to go over here and shield this, which, coincidentally enough, I saw you at Granite Con also. So, it does work. Like, it's crazy to think about when you sold me on the website, but that's exactly how it works. Like, it's very simplistic.
That was really one of the main goals of it, was that it was just too tricky to discover conventions. There definitely are resources that have been around longer. We launched the site on February 29th of this year. But we basically wanted to present the information in a different format, and basically in a way that someone, like you said, could pick New England, what is coming up, and it's by date, and oh wow, here's everything, and you can narrow it down by a specific theme that you want to find. And the other thing too was I took a very different approach to my website, because there's no ads, there's no clickbait, there's not even a pop-up to say join my mailing list, which there is one that no one's on, but that's because I don't really do much with it. But the thing is I hate sites when it's like, go here and read this article, and the next thing you know, you're lost on like page 25 of some crazy ad. I hate that about the internet. So even though it's a cheap way to make a buck, we really said, no, we're going to go the other direction, and we will not have ads. We will not have pop-ups on the site ever.
And one thing I've noticed like immediately about it is it's very clean. Like, you'd think it'd be difficult, to find something. It's like, no, it's totally easy. You literally, guys, you have the links for like cosplayers, for an instance. You guys, oh, here's a cosplay group. You click them, and there's a picture of them. You're like, oh, okay. Like, everything just kind of is easy to find, and it's interconnected, which kind of brings me to the first question I wanted to ask you. When did you start going to conventions first?
I've been going to conventions now, I think, actually about 4 or 5 years. My very first convention was here in Maine. It was called PortCon. It's a great convention down in Portland, Maine, at the Doubletree every summer. And I went, the very first year I went, I just walked around to see what it was. I didn't even know what cosplay was back then. And I got talking with some people. They saw my Halloween costume, and they said, oh my God, you do a really good Hellboy. Why didn't you bring it? And I said I didn't think it was good enough, and I was introduced to the convention world. So that's when I got my start. The finding the other cons to go to really came about when I got my dad into cosplaying. I talked him into doing the first Doctor, the original
Oh,
Doctor Who.
nice.
And it took me about a year to talk him into it, and I think it's quite possible that he likes to cosplay more than I do, which is impressive. And afterwards, he was like, let's go to more cons. And I was like, sure. And he's like, where do I find him? And I said, I don't know, Google it. And this was years ago, like a year and a half ago. And he did, and he came back and he said, you try. And I went, all right, I know computers better. And I went on and I went, wow, there should be something better or different, or this just isn't what I want. And the idea just kind of stuck. And then I started going to more and more cons, and I heard from everybody, convention attendees, people who did podcasts, cosplayers, even the convention organizers saying there should be something better.
Yeah, my story's kind of actually the same with you. My first comic convention ever was New York Comic Con 2011. Now, imagine if that's your first exposure to that culture. I went in there like 120,000 people. Yep. I didn't know what anything was. I was afraid to cosplay. Like, you're scared. And after that, I finished it. And like till 2012, I was like, well, I guess that's the next convention I'm going to, because I didn't know this was such a local thing. And it wasn't until probably 2014 when Vermont Comic Con started, I was like, I'm going to just look into what other conventions there are. And getting to actually know and become now really good friends with the owner of Vermont Comic Con, Jay, I kind of got exposed to this world, which is kind of like how I, ran into you and everything, is for being at cons. And like me and you kind of talked about this in our Facebook messages. At any given weekend, you look at it now, like the northeast side of the United States and northwest, there's like 3 or 4 given cons within 4 hours of your home. It's kind of insane how much there's going on now.
Oh yeah, I mean, if you want to go to a convention every single weekend of the year, you can do it. It's just a matter of how far do you want to drive. And yeah, about within 4 hours, you can usually find something either north, south, east, or west of you. And the cool part is that every con is different. There's the massive cons like New York Comic Con. There's the not so massive. PortCon is about 3,000 plus people, roughly. But then there's also in Massachusetts, there's a convention called the Haverhill Public Library Con, which I went to, which was even smaller, but it was an absolute blast. And I got to meet you get to meet people, you get to talk to people. So all of a sudden I was talking to one of the CEOs of Archie Comics.
Oh, wow.
So just because they happen to be tabling at that con. So whether it's a big con, a small con, a medium-sized con, I like to say that my site treats all conventions equal. Basically, we want to tell you, hey, here's all of them, and we leave it up to you to decide what con fits you best. Are you a mega con? Are you, is that if that's your thing, great. If it's a medium-sized con that you like, where you get a little more, one-on-one time with the stars, that's cool. And if you like the really small ones, there's nothing wrong with that either.
Yeah. I did want to ask you kind of about that. When I started, obviously New York Comic Con, so that's the only thing I knew. And there's a lot of people out there, and I talk to these people all the time. And I've talked to them in Vermont. Believe it or not, they won't go to Vermont Comic Con, even though they live 10-minute bike ride away. And I'm like, why? And they're like, well, it's not New York or San Diego. It's not 150,000 people. And it kind of puts into perspective, and I don't know if you've heard that, the people expect grander than life, spectacles. Have you, by any chance, run into those people as well, where they refuse to go to the smaller, more local cons? My personal favorite is about 6,000 to 12,000 people, because it's enough that you see a somewhat spectacle and there's cool stuff there, but you also get to actually kind of interact with the celebrities and everything. At New York, when I walk up to a celebrity, I better be paying. At Granite, I walked up to the Red Ranger, and he was like, yo, man, you want to take a picture? You want a hug? Let's talk. I was like, whoa, this is cool, It's a different atmosphere between these cons.
It is, and you definitely run into people, and like I said, everyone's different. People, after they try out a couple cons, they tend to get an idea of what they like. If you are about the big mega cons, you get to meet some amazing people, but it does get to be a bit more on the pricey side. And you may not exactly get a lot of time with them, but still you did get to meet them. You get to, shake their hand, get a picture, get an autograph. That's great. But for example, there's another convention in Maine that is called Bangor Comic and Toy Con, which is again in that 3,000 to 6,000 ballpark range. And the very first year they happened, I got to go up and meet Doug Jones.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
And Doug is one of the most awesome people on the planet. If Doug is going to a convention, that is reason alone to go to the con. I don't care what size it is. Doug is an absolute awesome guy. And of course, I was in full Hellboy gear, and I got him to autograph my Fist of Doom, which was an absolute blast. A great example is in last year, I went down to Rhode Island Comic Con, which I really enjoyed because Ron Perlman was going to be there.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when I was in Bangor, I got to chat, I got to sort of hang out and really get to talk quite a bit with Doug Jones, and it was a really nice meeting. I got to talk to him for quite a bit. When I went to Rhode Island, which is a lot bigger, I got to see Ron. Ron appreciated my cosplay. Ron also signed my Fist of Doom. But the thing was, Ron had been signing autographs for probably about the last hour and a half and honestly looked like he needed a sandwich. He looked really tired. He did his QA where he was back to his normal self. He had energized. He was the constant professional that he always is, and the one and that I love. But it was sort of like my thought in my back of my head was, boy, if I ever get the chance to bump into Ron at a 3,000 to 6,000 person convention, it would be really cool because maybe I'd get to talk to him a little bit more.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people that are going to listen to this, and I know a lot of people that listen to some of my other interviews, like I recently did one right before I went to Chase Con. I did one with Sam Chase, who's the owner of that con. And I actually got to meet a couple of my fans there who were like, we never would have gave this con a chance. We didn't even know it was in the area up until your interview, which I think that's kind of important to keep an eye out for because, believe it or not, like, there's cons literally, like you said, happening everywhere, and it's all a matter of the size and stuff. But when you go, I think you can try to get, into the culture. And I think a lot of people don't understand the culture up until you've been to one. Have you kind of noticed that same thing?
Yeah, I mean, the very first time I went to PortCon, I knew about it because they happened to do a news report, and I saw a 10-second blurb. And I couldn't get any of my friends to go with me. My friends were all, we're all geeks, nerds, gamers, D&D, the works. And I'm like, let's go check this out. And they were like, no. And I was like, all right, I'll go by myself. And I did. And I can't say how happy I am that I made that decision years ago to go by myself and go check out this, this culture that I had no knowledge that even existed. It's an amazing group of people. The majority of cosplayers and the people that attend conventions are extremely welcoming and friendly, and you kind of feel like you can pick up a conversation with someone based on just the shirt you're wearing. It's almost you get the same type of camaraderie when you see like two Boston Red Sox fans bump into each other somewhere and they can just strike up a conversation. It's like that, but it's superheroes and comic books and all the wonderful, neat, nerd and geekdom and all that.
Right. Like I've said this, and the first time I went to New York Comic Con, I didn't know what I was expecting, and I think what really opened my eyes was I was just kind of resting by the Marvel booth. Like I've spent 10 hours walking the damn floor because I was there at 8 a.m. waiting outside, right? And I'm waiting there, and I'm just looking at panning across the crowd, and this is at the time, the Jersey Shore was popular. And I literally saw this pack of, the terminology is technically wrong, but they were known at the time, and they're known as, Guidos. And the dudes were literally carrying in their arms, they couldn't even balance it, like a stack of Spider-Man figures and comics, and it's these giant muscle dudes you would never picture would be there. And these guys had the biggest smile on their face. And they just stopped in front of me. I was like, hey, what'd you guys pick up? They're like, oh man, we got this Hobgoblin. Yo, check out this Marvel Legends figure. I was like, I never, if I saw those guys on the street, I would automatically stereotype them into douchebags, because that's how our culture is. Never until a comic convention would I picture I would sit down and chill with these guys and start talking about the Hobgoblin action figure. That's what I love about comic conventions, because even at my local one, I ran into people that I never thought I would run into from high school because they kept it hidden. You never know who you're going to find at these things, and I think that's one of the best aspects of going to a comic convention, honestly, is you see the variety of people in different fandoms. I don't know anything about Doctor Who, but I love seeing the passion for Doctor Who, man. It's crazy how much people love that stuff. So
you gotta watch some Doctor Who.
I've seen the Eccleston run, and
yep.
I'm a person, though, who has to watch everything from the beginning, so I would have to watch all the OG stuff, and I just don't have time.
Yeah, it's I mean, that's the other cool thing. Like at the smaller cons, like some people will sort of just brush it off and say, "Oh, I'm not going to check that out." But there's a convention that it doesn't exist anymore, which is a shame. But it was called Inconceivable, and R.J. Wagner ran it with his wife. And you can bump into him. You might see him around. They're known as the Borrowed Tomb. He does fangs. He's awesome. RJ's an awesome guy. He's one of the merchants on my site. I went to his convention, and the really cool part was there's a little movie called Axanar, which has been all over the news, getting sued in a lawsuit with like CBS and Paramount.
Oh boy!
Back before all that happened, I got to see the 15-minute preview of the movie at the inaugural showing of it because they showed it at RJ's convention.
Huh.
And after watching it, I wanted to see the rest of the movie.
Now, you're of course talking about the Star Trek one, right?
Yeah, the Star Trek Axanar, the one that's caught all the attention. So all of a sudden, a year or so later, I'm there hearing things are wrapping up, they're getting ready, and all of a sudden this massive thing, and all of a sudden nationally, everyone's talking about the movie that I got to see the preview of, like a year and a half ago, and I'm like, that's really it's cool. The other thing too is you know Marvel Comics and DC Comics and the movies are great, and it's a perfect time to be a comic fan. I am not sure there's ever been a better time especially with the movies and TV shows. But the thing is, if you're feeling like the two big guys are just sort of retelling the same stories, these are where you meet the innovative people, the independent guys. This is where you can discover comic books, graphic novels, authors, writers, artists that are doing amazing stuff. Every single genre across the board is covered, and you can meet them, and they're up and coming. This is these are the guys who will have the next big thing. You just don't know who it is, but you get a chance to meet them, talk to them, and you can discover their product before anyone else. So if you're looking for new material, it's really worth checking out some of these conventions because you should stop and talk to the artists and the writers. So there's really talented individuals out there.
I'm actually glad you bring that up because that was going to be my next question anyway. Like everybody that goes to comic conventions now, which like when I went to Granite, which was the most recent one, when I walked through the door, there was literally people who just recognized me. Like, hey, aren't you the dude from Vermont Comic Con? Like, we started talking now. Everybody knows. Like, if you start going to conventions, you pretty much start to have a convention family, con family. Same people, you run into them, you start talking to them, you start hanging out with them. I now have some of my best friends are literally people I met at comic conventions, and we'll hang out frequently. We talk on a daily basis. Like, it's one of these things where once you make this connection, you don't understand what you were missing before you went there. Like, right now, I'm actually in a process with a couple of the writers of these local comics. I'm actually going to be slowly taking a film script I had from when I went to film school and transitioning it into a comic because that's a better way I can tell, my vision without having to sink millions of dollars into it. And that never would have happened without these smaller conventions. Like, and I tell people, if you have like a book idea or something like that, these small cons are going to be where you're going to get traction. Like, you get a table, and I mean, you've dealt with this too. You could go to one of these conventions with 6,000 people. You could get a vending table for maybe $200, and you're going to make such good friends and tell your, product to these people that you don't want to miss that. It's literally some of the greatest advertising I've ever done.
Yeah. One of the really cool parts is, one, getting to meet people, and two, like a big part of my site is I had the concept, like last summer I said, I'm going to do this. I'm just going to build this site. And I had no idea how I was going to do it. I just decided I was going to do it. And I walked around Boston Comic Con 2015 with the idea I'd bought the website 4 days ago. And I cold pitched it. No business cards, no nothing, just a general concept to vendors. And everyone kept handing me the business cards as fast as I could. And I left with a stack of business cards, and I just started working on the concept. I started, it was, okay, how do I do this? How do I do that? And then people like R.J. Wagner, people like Rusty Gilligan, these people that are in the convention scene, on the con circuit, and I got talking with and got to know, liked what they heard and started to offer input, which I was more than happy to take. One of the reasons the site is designed or looks the way that it is because someone along the way said, it would be great if your site did this. Mm-hmm. And I said, that's a really good piece of input. So if you're open enough to hear what people have to share, if you're open to taking even constructive criticism, these guys have to some degree been down the road a little ways ahead of you. They kind of know what works, what to avoid. And the thing is, a lot of people are really interested in just helping you and seeing you succeed. It's very much a kind of like if one of us succeeds, we all succeed type deal. We all have our own projects, but you get so much activity off social media and sharing and cross promoting, and you just make amazing. It's really networking from a business standpoint. It's almost like going to a business trade show, but you get to have a lot more fun.
Right. And I'm glad you kind of brought that aspect up to networking and, getting to know people. Because here's what I always tell people. You see that one person sitting there at their table, give them 5 minutes of your time. Because guess what? If he's writing that comic today, in 5 years, he could be the guy writing that Spider-Man comic. And he's going to remember that you reached out when he was a little guy. And I've had that happen. I know 2 people who now work in the industry. One dude does concept art for Marvel movies, and he occasionally just sends me something. He's like, hey, don't talk about this, please, but what do you think of this? And I just go, oh my god, I see why I can't talk about this, because this might end up in a movie. But I just so happened to see this guy lonely at a table drawing, and I was like, hey, how much is your commission? He's like, $50. I was like, sweet, here, draw my wife. So I sat down next to him, and for 2 hours we just chatted and got to know each other. And now he works for Marvel as a conceptual artist. But 5 years ago, nobody would give him, the time of day to talk to him. And you can do that at these conventions, and you can learn something. You can cross-promote, pretty much like me and you are. I mean, I'm on your website.
Yeah.
And people can find me there. You're in this interview. I have your thing, listed in my description. I put it as an advert during our sponsored podcasts. It's really just sharing the love that we all have for the same thing, which is, none of us want to work a 9 to 5 every day, and all of us want to be in our passion, right? And that's what we're all trying to do. So it's fun,
Yeah, definitely. That's really the networking side of it. It was sort of, as I started to develop the website to discover conventions, it quickly came about in conversation of, why don't we make it so you can discover a vendor, a podcast, an artist, a writer, a photographer. Because not only are possibly you, the congoer, looking for one, perhaps there's someone starting a brand new convention who has got all this idea and energy, but they have no idea where to find anyone to staff their tables.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why we put the conventions wanted thing in. Are you a semi-professional or aspiring to be professional cosplayer? It's a legit thing. It's not easy, but, getting a profile on the site, putting your name out there, and doing charity work and getting gigs. And if you're good enough, eventually, a con will say, hey, you know what? We can hook you up with a table. Why don't you come hang out? We'd love to have your costume there.
Yep.
And people do it. So it's kind of one of those, you sort of hear when you're a kid, you can be anything you want. You sort of hear, chase your dreams and stuff like this. And by the time you hit high school, it's kind of become a cute motivational poster on the wall. And then by the time you get out of college, it's kind of been beat out of you, and you pick up a 9-to-5 job, and you just kind of settle into the routine. When you hit the point where that isn't enough, and you realize that this is your passion, comics, creativity, local stuff, national, whatever it is, independent authors, jewelry, sculpture, 3D printing. I mean, take your pick. The amount of talented individuals at all of these conventions is through the roof. I wish I was an artist. I would love to sit there and do commission artwork. Nobody pays for my artwork. I built a website. I say I work with the talents I have.
Yep. And that's another thing. I constantly, when I want to compare to the everyday folks, I bring up my mom and how she doesn't know. To her, still every video game system is a damn Nintendo, right? She doesn't know anything about all this stuff. And this past weekend at ChaseCon, my dad, actually, who started going to Vermont Comic Con last year, because he was like, I don't get this costuming. This isn't my thing. Now he does a costume. My daughter comes with us, does a costume. So my mom was like, I want to see what the hell this is. She showed up to ChaseCon. She was like, wow, this is awesome. Look at all these people. Look at all this talent. She just sat there watching people walk by, being like, huh, this is really fun. And my mom can't tell you the difference between like anything. She doesn't. She like doesn't even know who the Hulk is. Okay, she just looks at. She goes, "Oh, green Batman." I'm like, "Yeah, sure, green Batman, mom. You know, you're close enough in the same ballpark, right? Like, you know." So that's the type of thing. Like these conventions have so many things that even if you don't think you're gonna enjoy, you know, you probably can. And like that's why I think your website is kind of a good resource because you could literally just go to it and be like, "Hey, you guys, you know, you see, I'm interested in a con. Check this out, right?" And you never know. Your family might be interested. I mean, it can happen, you know?
Yeah, one of the big things that we also decided early on with the site was we just wanted to present the information and give it to the people who need it. Mm-hmm. One thing we decided to avoid completely was we don't have a ranking system. We don't really give, 3 stars, 5 stars. We do have a blog section where you can read about some experiences that I've had at conventions that I've gone to. And I do a brief little write-up, and it's just sort of, hey, this was what it was like for me when I checked out the convention. But in all reality, it's more just this was my experience, and the usual message is you should go have one of your own. If you want to do some research on it, it's definitely not a bad thing to do. And social media is a wonderful platform for it. Take what you discover with a grain of salt, and still, trust but verify is always a good policy. If one person says this convention was lousy, maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. If you start seeing 400 or 500 people say the convention was lousy, okay, maybe something went wrong. The other thing too is if you go to a con and it has a bad year, it happens. Mm-hmm. Now, there's multiple reasons why it happens, but it happens. I guess I'm a bit of an optimist. I like to give the convention the benefit of the doubt. The cons that don't seem to want to be fixed or aren't able to seem to go away. The ones that last are the ones that learn from their mistakes, make adjustments, and move forward. So that's kind of sort of a good sign. If you heard, a con 2 years ago had a really rough go of it, maybe they did, But last year, maybe the con did a little bit better. And maybe this year, maybe they'll do even better. It's a lot of volunteers. It's a lot of people who are doing it on top of their other jobs. And mm-hmm. being a con organizer is definitely not an easy gig. Yeah. So, I guess it's sort of, it can be frustrating and it can be infuriating at times. And you have every right to be, ticked off. But at the same time, try to remember, just sort of cut them a little bit of slack and hope that they're open to hearing constructive criticism later. And if they aren't, maybe you don't return to that convention.
Yeah, exactly what he's saying. And there are a few times, like I've said, I've been to so many cons now, and my personal least favorite are the big ones because every year they're just inviting more people, but it seems to be less, disorganized. But like when I talk to smaller cons and I get to eventually talk to the owners and stuff, they do take note. They're like, oh, like this past weekend when I was at Chase, he walks up to me, he's like, "Hey, Armin, well, what do you think of the buzz of the con? What have people been saying?" So I just stood with the owner for about 10 minutes, and we just talked right there on the show floor. He was like, "All right, I'll take your tips." And he, inboxed me after being like, "Okay, so I talked to some other people. This was definitely an issue this time. We're going to work on that next time." So, there are sometimes, like he says, you will go to a convention that maybe hasn't had the best year, but maybe the previous years were good. And that's also because, like, the people that run conventions can change. Like, Vermont Comic Con has had fourth year coming up, third person running it. So you have to kind of take that into consideration, too. When things change, people, new jobs, things like that. So
the other thing, too, is conventions always need volunteers. And if you really like where a convention is, because maybe it's your local con, and you want to help out, I guarantee that the convention organizer is probably more than happy to talk to you and say, yeah, what can we, what are your skills? Where can we put you?
Yeah, that's definitely going to happen. I know tons of people that volunteer at cons. Some of my friends they volunteer at like Boston Comic Con or Anime Boston, which is also a pretty good con. And I've said this before, I don't know a single thing about anime, but Anime Boston is probably one of the best cons I've ever been to, if not the best. It's just that good. So I'm
in the same boat. I'm limited on my anime. I'm working on getting more educated in it in my spare time. But yeah, I went to Anime Boston last year and I was blown away. And even though I don't really watch anime all that much, I can totally appreciate the cosplay. I can recognize the passion. I have to usually ask who somebody is because I'm like, I think like Sword Art Online and Knights of Sidonia are about like, that's kind of where I start tapping out on, okay, I'm not sure about the rest.
See, you're further ahead than I am. I know your Dragon Ball or your slinky pirate guy whose name I can never remember because those all look the same. And I can identify Cloud from Final Fantasy. So it's like, that's my wheelhouse. And like Anime Boston, I went there and I got like educated because I'd be like, hey, can I take a picture of you? They'd be like, oh, sure. And I'd be like, I'm not going to lie to you. I don't know who this is. And suddenly this person's like, oh, do you want to hear? Let me tell you about this character. And I'm just like getting this huge education. I'm like, huh, this is interesting. And you can tell the passion of a lot of these people at conventions. And like I've noticed, and I don't know if you've noticed this too, maybe we could talk about this a little bit. There's people that go to conventions that I know that are shy. When they put on a costume, they like become that character and you see their actual side. Like one of my best friends, Dana, he's afraid of people. Like I swear to God, he can't talk to a girl. He tosses on the low-key costume. You would think this guy is a pimp. Like I don't understand what happens to him. So like a cosplay has this transformative ability that like turns people into like who they actually are. And like because it like enables you to roleplay this character you connect with. Have you noticed that too?
Yeah, I've definitely noticed that. It's armor. It's Captain America's shield. It's Thor's hammer. It's Hellboy's fist of doom. It's a matter of all of a sudden you're not you. You're you representing and interpreting something that you really enjoy and are passionate about. So yeah, I've definitely seen it, and I've seen people come out of their shells, and to the point where there's multiple articles written online about people who say, like within the business world, if you're a manager or something, find out if you have Dungeons and Dragons players, because what characters they play in the game, those same roles can be applied to what their strengths are in the workplace. Do you always play the leader? You're the paladin. Are you the thief? What do? You're the bard. Are you the medic that's always taking care of everybody? Those skills transpose over, and a lot of times it's easy to self-doubt yourself. We all have it. I'm no exception. There's times that I question what I'm doing. I'm pretty sure of myself most of the time, but everybody has those moments, and it's sort of like, it's nice to have an area where you can just go and feel like, okay, yeah, I got this.
Yeah.
One thing you brought up real quick was you mentioned that when you went to the conventions that you went and like at the anime cons and you asked to take their picture. That's a huge thing. And I know most people listening to your show know it, but it can't be said enough. If you go to a con and you want to take a cosplayer's picture, by all means, just ask first. It's as simple as a nod, a raise of an eyebrow, can I? And 9 times out of the time, they'll be more than happy to put down whatever they're doing, strike an amazing pose, and you get a great shot. Don't be the guy that walks around and just all of a sudden snaps the picture of the really attractive girl because she's bending over to pick something up. Don't be that guy. Come on.
Yeah, actually,
you get the internet for that if you want it. All
I
right.
did want to also mention that too because that happens so frequently, man. It's weird, but it's like I've noticed. You go to a con and like I say, con is self-expression. Like cosplaying and everything. It's like. So when people see me, I cosplay some of these more darker characters like the Punisher, Magneto, and there's a reason, and people that are my fans know why I have a personal connection to these, and that's really what it is. So, and if I'm walking around and I look stern, it's because I'm taking on the role of that character, and people stop me and go, oh, can I take a picture? I'm like, oh yeah, totally, and it's like when other people do that, if they put like 20, 30, 40 hours into their costume. That's their reward. You taking that picture is literally like you giving them $100 because that's why they did it. So you're that fan who gets like that look in their face and like you just light up their day. Like my wife spent something like 70 hours making steampunk Tinkerbell, and there was literally this last con, there was a little girl who saw her. She froze in her steps and couldn't even move. Her parents had to be like, "Are you okay?" until my wife gave her a hug because she couldn't believe Tinkerbell was in front of her. Like that's what con does, it's this huge open way, and what we're both telling you here is you should be going to cons, find a local con near you, because you're not going to be disappointed. If you're listening to this goddamn interview when you haven't been to a con, I will come to your house and slap you in the face personally, because you should be going to cons.
I'm too busy working on my website, so I'll let Armin show up at your house for me.
Right. So with that in mind, do you have anything else you want to tell these people to wrap it up, or what else they should be looking for at cons? What should they be doing? Where to go?
I would say basically where to go. Go to cosplayconventioncenter.com. Go to my website. Like us on Facebook. We're on Twitter. Like us, share us, follow us. If you have comments, suggestions, ideas, the email address is right on the website. You can shoot out. You'll reach me directly. It's a two-man crew. It's me and my business partner, Jerry, who basically made my mental concept a digital reality. Jerry Shannon, he's an awesome guy, and I couldn't have done this project without him. And we're always open to ideas, input, suggestions, things like that. And besides that, I say go check out a con. Don't be afraid to cosplay. And basically show up, be nice, and everyone will be nice to you, and you'll be amazed at the people you're going to meet. You will have more fun and make more professional contacts than you ever thought possible.
That's true, and if I think you're kind of going to agree with me this, and I told this, I hosted 3 panels so far in the last like a month and a half, and this is all I tell people. Bring business cards, please.
Yeah, okay, in regards to business cards, this is a good point. Yes, do business cards. And I'm honestly going to say this. Pick your company. I personally use Vistaprint.
Yep.
I've had good luck with them. But, if yours, I think there's Moo Publishing. If you want to use the local guy down the street, go and get a business card. And honestly, there's a great old saying called KISS, which is keep it simple, stupid. And it really applies to business cards. Like, you don't need to overload it. Put, something that's going to catch someone's eye. Put your name. Put your email. If you want to be contacted via your phone, put your phone number on there and your social media links and call it good. Like, you don't need to overload the card with a ton of information. I'll find all that as soon as I hit your website and your social media.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, a lot of people question business cards. My advice, get business cards. And then honestly, if you decide you want to, get a merchant profile on Cosplay Convention Center, because it's essentially a digital business card that you can load pictures up to. We can embed videos. Your podcast is a great example. You guys have got an awesome merchant profile where it's an amazing snapshot of what you do. And, oh, hey, I can even stream the podcast right into, here on the window and check it out. And here's all the links to everything I ever wanted to find.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, definitely business cards. And if you find yourself going to conventions and tabling, snag a merchant profile, because then people will be able to discover you just like that. And to be honest, we're the only site that does that.
Yeah, that's what I want to stress here to people, that this is the only site to this day that I found with this resource. You literally cannot do better than that. Like, it is your one-stop shop go-to. And like right now, like, I'm just quickly at mine to kind of give you guys an example. It has a few pictures, me at a panel, me cosplaying. The podcast is right there, the video feed, link to our website, and then right here, literally a list of the upcoming comic conventions we're going to. And if you click that, you click like Super Mega Fest, it takes you to that. Oh, it says, oh, look, Comic Book Cast will be there. Like, it's that simple. You can't do better than that.
It's really the goal of the site. Our tagline is one site to find them all. It popped into my head and we went with it. And that's really what it is. It's a matter of, we want people to be able to find conventions. If you're a writer and you're looking for an artist, we want you to be able to go click on merchants. Hey, here's all the artists that we know of. And honestly, they're really talented and they're really nice. I got a piece commissioned off one Jesse Lundberg, who does Lundberg Graphics on my site. I just commissioned a piece of artwork for a shirt, because we have a shirt company that's starting on the side that's brand new. And I commissioned him for a piece of artwork, and it came out amazing. I couldn't believe how good it came out. Like, I knew he was good, but he nailed it, and I couldn't have been happier. So, yeah, it's kind of like, if you have LinkedIn for your professional job, maybe you do computers or something like that, it's almost like having a LinkedIn profile for the convention community.
Yep. So there it is, guys. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this interview. I know you guys have been asking for more, especially with all these people I'm meeting. So check the description down below. You'll find all the links to everything. And hopefully we see you guys at cons. And You know, do your research, because I guarantee there's a con close to you. I guarantee it.
Yep. And if you see me at a con, definitely come up and say hi. Be friendly. I am not shy. I'll talk your ear off.
Well, there we go, guys. So, thank you very much, everybody, and have a good one.
Thanks for having me on.